that night shift. And for me, that was actually my first cardiac arrest.
Okay. That you were involved in.
That I was involved in, yeah. It was, oh God, thinking about now gives me like chills. It's a very core memory of mine. And I remember, I think I must have looked in a bit of shock, and because all the ICU nurses, they see what's going on the monitors before it's happening, they're anticipating it a lot more. And so I had a little chat with one of the charge nurses after, just to ask, and just because for me, I process things better if I have a bit more information, just to ask like how they saw it and how they anticipated it. And we just had a bit of a debrief, and it made me feel like I could process it a little bit better, but I still they told me to go for a break then. And I remember just sitting outside and just having a little bit of a cry, actually.
Yeah.
It was just like the letdown of adrenaline.
Yeah. Did you have your hands on their chest doing compressions?
No, I didn't do compressions, but I was sort of the run around and just getting, if they were asking me for something, so I was the one who went and got the crash trolley.
Yeah.
And then I was just sort of peripheral. But I think it's just witnessing it is just, you see, it's a brutal process. It is traumatic.
Sorry, did they have debriefing? Did you go for a debrief afterwards? Because that's really important when you've been in a crisis situation, that people get together and have a bit of a huddle and talk about what happened.
I don't think because I wasn't a staff member of the ICU, I don't think that I spoke to some people afterwards that I in like the staff room, had a bit of a chat with them, but I don't think I was part of any official debriefing because I was back on my ward by then. But I went through my next 2 night shifts just as systematic as I could, and it was just felt very much get through these night shifts. And it wasn't until the very end of those 3 night shifts that I felt really anxious, really upset, and I just couldn't explain it. I felt really anxious to go back into work. Those 2 night shifts that followed, I felt fine. I was like, I'm getting through these nights. I'm okay. It's when I went home and I had to come back to work, it's when I felt super anxious. Yep. And it was a colleague of mine that said to me on the wards that she said, you don't seem yourself today. Do you want to go have a chat? And we just pops into the storeroom, which is every nurse's office, to have a debrief. Is that all the sluice? She just said to me, you don't seem yourself. What's going on? And I explained that I'd just the week before I'd been in ICU, and it was my first arrest, and I just felt a bit overwhelmed. And she was the one who said to me, why don't you take a break? It didn't even occur to me that I should maybe apply for a little bit of annual leave or just have a bit of time off. So I decided to go speak to my manager, and they were very lovely, and they arranged a couple of annual leave days to coordinate with my general off days. So I had a week off work, and I just spent that week really silly things, just doing wellness things. I was doing yoga, I was reading more, I was trying to walk, I was trying to go see friends, and it really just made me feel better about coming back to work.
Yes.
It was so silly. I just remember that shift, just the one I came back from ICU, just feeling like I almost felt like I found it a little bit difficult to organise myself. And
after your week off?
No, just after the arrest, yeah.
That's exactly right. What happens, your brain goes into this sort of mode where you function and have to do what you have to do.
Yeah.
But when you're turned off, you've gone home, that's when it catches up and it overwhelms you. I've been through trauma, and you sort of can hold it all together and function quite properly and think clearly and be very systematic. But then somebody only has to say, you okay? And you just totally collapse. God,
that's a trigger word, isn't it?
Are you okay?
No. You're like, actually, no, I'm really not okay.
I'm pretty good till you said that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just that adrenaline, you're keeping that held in your body for such a long time, and then somewhere it's going to go bursting out. You're going to snap at somebody or scream at somebody. So they were very good to just take that time down and let the pressure cooker fizzle out rather than blow the steam.
Yeah, and coming back to work after that, I felt ready to go at it guns blazing. I wouldn't have myself initiated the time off unless someone had told me to take some time off.
You wouldn't have
I
thought
almost
of
think
it.
I should power through. And I'm so grateful to that person who just said to me, look after yourself, take a bit of time off.
Good.
Your job will always be here when you get back. What's a week?
Exactly. How long after all of this did you decide, I'm going to go traveling? You told me this young girl that had a tumour, but that was one of the catalysts. Was it not long after this you thought, oh, wait a minute, nursing is a really good traveling companion?
Yeah, I think I fully decided that I was going in the summer of 2021, and I decided that I was going to take the year to save up. So I kind of was a bit lazy over Christmas, and then back in January I was like, no, right, arse in gear, we're doing it. And I was meant to go with a friend to Asia, was our original plan. We were going to travel Asia. And then she got a promotion. So she was doing someone's maternity cover. And I thought about it and I was like, oh, maybe I could do Australia while I'm waiting for her to finish that maternity cover, and then we can go and do Asia together. And then the date just got later and later for her to be available. And I just decided I'm going. Come join me if you want to come, but I'm going. And yeah, from I think it was about April 2022 up to that, I was like, right, Australia's the first stop. I was going to do 4 months, come home and then do Asia. I had a friend getting married in the middle of my year off work. That's what I went home for. But then my plans changed a little bit and I ended up signing up to be a nurse out here instead.
So why choose Australia?
Oh, I've always wanted to come to Australia since I was young. And a friend of mine's sister has travelled here and she loved it. She was here for, I think, a year. A few of my other nursing friends have travelled here and loved it, lived here for a couple of years. I've got two friends I actually used to work with, one in Melbourne, one in Sydney, and I've been to see both of them. And yeah, I only planned to do the East Coast for 4 months, and then I just fell in love with it a little bit and started travelling a little bit more of it. So I decided to do the West Coast.
So you love Australia?
I'm enjoying it, yeah.
Is the nursing different? Have you found the difference between nursing in London and nursing in Australia?
Yes, there is differences, but I think nursing in general, your basic nursing care never changes no matter where you go. There's the basics of it. It's just the processes or protocols or policies that just differ slightly. Names for things have been a steep learning curve for me. You love your brand names here. I had to ask what Panadol was and just thinking, oh God, I'm so embarrassed it's paracetamol. But yeah, it's just I feel like a new grad almost, like just not knowing the names of things or
I've heard that
bizarre.
before. Yeah. I've heard that from another English nurse. She said the same, what's Mylanta?
Yeah, and I was like, I promise you, I've been qualified nearly 5 years. I'm not new. I just don't know what the name for it is.
Yeah.
Bluey was another one for me, which is like we call them Inco pads at home.
Inco?
Like the incontinence pads.
Oh, yeah.
Blueys. And I was like, what's a Bluey? And they're like, oh, just grab me a Bluey. I'm like, don't know what it is. Yeah.
Run to the treatment room looking on the Bluey, blue. There's nothing here.
Yeah.
It must be hard to jump from one, country to another and have to adapt on your first ward. And you were doing agency?
Yeah.
So you weren't even staying in the same hospital all the time. Yeah, every day was a different day in a different hospital, different ward.
Yeah, I decided to do agency just because it meant that if I wanted to up sticks and move or travel around, then I've got the flexibility to do that. But also at the same time, I've just made my life so much harder. My first couple shifts were steep learning curves, and I think my first shift in Australia, I was on a medical ward, and my background is surgery, and it was everyone was really lovely and they took the time for me, but it was just because it was my first shift and I was just thinking, I'm new to Australia, I'm new to the process, I'm not really medical's not my favourite. I was like, I'm just going to say to them that I don't want to do med, I just want to do surge for a while, just so I can at least feel a little bit more confident. When I was working as an enablement assistant, it was predominantly mental health, and that is
a different ball game.
A different ball game completely, and it's just a different set of skills. And that I think was quite, that was quite an emotionally challenging sort of field to be in as well. So I commend any mental health nurses as well, or any type of nursing actually. I think everyone's a bit of a legend really.
So through your time in that pandemic, was there any professional or personal development or growth that you found, something that really impacted and you thought, wow, okay, I did learn from that?
Oh, so many things. The one that sticks out to me during COVID, due to a few staff sicknesses, and I was working with a few agency and bank nurses. Bank is, so I guess that's your casual workers here. So it's like they work for the hospital, but they're almost like agency for the hospital, I guess. That's what we call bank. So I was the only regular member of staff left after people had to go home sick. And so, fortunately or unfortunately, I was in charge, and I'd not been in charge of the ward before. And I found it so strange that actually the agency and bank nurses that I was working with were definitely more qualified than me, bit of a higher ranking, but because I was the only regular staff, I had to be in charge. They were so great, actually. They helped me a lot through the shift and gave me sort of advice about how to manage. And our manager was still giving me help as well throughout the shift. And it was a really challenging shift and it felt very overwhelming. And that just, for me, I decided to put myself forward to be in charge again. I spoke to our manager and I just said that I felt a bit overwhelmed and it was almost a bit blindsiding. And if it happened again, I wanted to be prepared. So I asked if we could arrange a shift where maybe I would be in charge, and we had someone to take patients but support who was senior. And I got some really great feedback from that shift, actually, some anonymous feedback. And yeah, that just inspired me to be a bit more confident, progress to actually, I then applied to be a band 6, which is when we start coordinating shifts and being a more senior member of the team, senior nurse. So yeah, that was, and that was also during COVID as well. So yeah, a bit stressful, but I'm glad I did it. It was a horrible shift, but came through it on the other end, unscathed.
And totally more confident, I hope, in your ability to help manage wards and things like that.
And I think that's the thing. It's like, it's, for me, I learned by doing. And if I'd never done it, maybe I wouldn't have put myself forward as soon as I did. And then since then, just by having to be in charge nearly most of your shifts, you just get on with it. You practice and you get better and you manage and you learn what the best way to coordinate is.
Yeah. Well, this way you're having to look at the bird's eye view of the whole ward and who's here and your patients and your nursing staff and their skill mix and everything. Whereas when you're just on the ward, you look after your allocated patients. And
your little narrow scope. It's your safe zone. I found that my first night shift, because we would usually take patients overnight as well as being in charge. You think, oh, I'm now responsible for my patients, the staff, and now coordinating the shift. And you're thinking, oh my God. That first shift, and luckily again, I was on with really great members of staff. And again, I started off with senior members on the shift with me to help me get through it.
Yeah.
And we got there. It's just a bit of practice, and there's always someone that can come and help.
What is the weirdest thing you've come across in your nursing? Like, just what the moments,
Oh God, I can probably think of a few, but the one that always sticks out in my mind, when I was a student, I worked I did my placement as a student on the ward before I ended up working there. And so I was doing my sign-off management placement, and I think it was only my second day on this ward. And so I was getting used to working with altered airway patients. So I was always working with a nurse, and we had a laryngectomy patient. So a laryngectomy is where they've had the voice box removed and they've had the trachea has been brought forward to the front of the neck, and they always have like a hole in the front of their neck. And this is how they now breathe. So their sole airway is through the neck. There's no upper nasal or mouth breathing. They're known as a neck breather. And
Is that, just to explain, that's where people can talk through their hole in their throat?
So some people can get a voice valve prosthesis fitted. Some people can get like an electrolarynx, which is like a little box, and they hold it to their neck, and they can the frequency picks up and they can, with like speech